Arklay it hides mountains something oldest secret older. Beneath its mist, not a umbrella's mansion Spencer mansion sins could not stands contain as a tomb, not a home. The forest, once umbrella's first research ground, was repurposed into a failed quarantine. The progenitor virus never breached these peaks. It was already here, buried deep. What sleeps beneath the roots predates their experiments. The mist does not hide the mansion. Arklay it hides mountains something oldest secret older. Not a umbrella's mansion Spencer mansion sins could not stands contain as a tomb. Prison not a home, beneath ivy-clad stone, umbrella's first containment hub hummed. The progenitor virus, torn from Africa's stairway of the sunflower, thrived in Marcus 1968 Arklay lab. The forest did not guard the mansion, it guarded the anomaly. Roots drank experiments, mist masked exhalations of a thing older than Spencer's sin. Containment was a lie. The forest was the first quarantine, its soil a shroud for what the corporation could not bury. The walls breathe, the earth remembers. And the virus awaits its next host. What if the Arklay Mountains were a prison, not a mansion? The progenitor virus emerged from the asterisk stairway of the sun asterisk, a flower blooming in African obscurity. Its genetic lattice defied known biology. Umbrella's 1968 Arklay lab project, led by Dr. Marcus, sought to harness this anomaly. Experiments failed. The virus mutated. Leaks infected soil, water, and flesh. The Spencer mansion stood not as a fortress, but as a pivote's halls, a staging ground for containment protocols. Arklay Forest became an accident of quarantine, not by design but by necessity. Corpses rooted in the earth, mutations stalked the perimeter. The progenitor thrived in chaos. Marcus T-virus evolved from its fragments, a tamed shadow of its predecessor. Yet the original strain lingered, unbound by vaults or vaulted ceilings. A corporate report filed in 1972 noted, asterisk subject PV01 remains uncontained, all measures provisional, asterisk the forest breathes, the mansion waits. The virus that birthed empires remains what it has always been, unstoppable. By 1968, the Arklay lab stood as Marcus' monument to order. Beneath its stone walls, progenitor strains hummed in glassolive, but silent. The forest, vast and untamed, became the first quarantine. No fences, no alarms, just trees that watched. Umbrella's reach stretched across continents by the 90s. Yet Arklay remained sacred, a proving ground. Researchers noted anomalies, roots twisting into unnatural shapes, deer with eyes like liquid shadow. They called it asterisk ecosystem adaptation asterisk, a lie. The mansion's halls held more than labs. Its basements cradled failed experiments, creatures frozen mid-scream, their DNA fraying under progenitor's touch. Above ground, the forest mimicked normalcy, too perfectly. Birds fell silent near the west wing. Mushrooms bloomed where no sunlight reached. Marcus' team logged every shift, every death. They never asked why the trees grew denser near containment chambers. Why the wind carried whispers in no known tongue. The progenitor was not a prisoner. It was a tenant rearranging the walls. By 1998, the forest breathed in sync with the lab's machinery, a symbiosis of rot and steel. Umbrella's reports grew terse. Asterisk subject PV01 remains uncontained, all measures provisional. Asterisk they did not mention the roots cracking concrete, the blood in the soil, the mansion waited. The forest waited, and the virus, patient as stone, began to dream. The forest did not whisper, it choked on its own breath. Rotting pines exhaled a stench of iron and mildew, their roots gnawing at the mansion's foundation like starving things. Inside, the T-virus had already learned to bleed. July 1998, a month of rot and reckoning. The Bravo team entered through the east wing, their boots crunching acorns as if the earth itself resisted their passage. They carried night vision goggles, but no goggles could see the progenitor's shadow coiled in the walls. A scream, then another, not human. The labs had been abandoned, but the experiments had not. A rusted containment unit, its glass shattered, oozed black tendrils into the soil, the progenitor's spawn. The virus did not spread through air or water, it spread through asterisk neglect asterisk. Umbrella's files called it anomaly containment. The truth was quieter, they buried their mistakes here, let the forest's cold and silence smother what they could not, until the T-virus awoke. The Bravo team's radios crackled with static, then silence. Their reports, recovered years later, spoke of a hallway that bled when touched. Of a figure in the attic humanoid but too tall, its skin peeling like wet paper to reveal writhing flesh beneath. They died as the mansion's heart began to beat. What does a virus do when its prison cracks? It walks. The Arklay forest, once a passive shroud, became the first wound in Umbrella's secrecy. The Bravo team's corpses, left to fester, became vectors. The T-virus, no longer a whisper, became a howl. The forest still remembers, its trees lean inward as if listening. The mansion's windows, now shattered, blink like dying eyes, and beneath the soil the progenitor stirs no longer patient. It has learned to hunger. The ceiling crashes, ozone stings the air metallic, sharp, stone cracks like bone. The progenitor's veins pulse in the walls, birthing the T-virus in twisted filth. Blood blooms on oak, seeping into roots. Trees writhe, their bark splitting to expose glowing capillaries. The mansion was never a lab. It was a shroud of quarantine for a god too old for chains. Now its ribs are split, the forest breathes, and in the soil something hunts. The forest's breath was never clean. Beneath its boughs, the Spencer mansion stood as a vault for secrets too vast for human keeping. Walls of stone, doors of steliot the progenitor gnawed through. What Umbrella called research was a game of Russian roulette with ancient forces, each test a trigger. Each mutation a chamber spinning. The mansion's collapse was not an accident, it was a confession. Concrete ribs cracked under the weight of what they held. The progenitor, unshackled, fed on decay. Roots drank its poison, trees twisted into sentinels of rot. The forest's ecosystem withered, not from neglect, but from infection. Birds fell silent, rivers ran thick with something older than death. Umbrella buried the ruins, built Raccoon City on the bones, but the virus had already learned. It shed its skin, became the T-virus, a child of its father's failures. Became the T buried in virusa Arklay, child of its would rise in the father's streets of a town failures that never knew fear. The corporation's ledger shows no remorse, only cost projections. Cleanup crews became profit margins. The forest, once a prison, became a grave, and graves, as all things, give way. The progenitor's children now walk, the soil remembers. It hungers. The Spencer mansion stands hollow, its stones worn to bone. The forest breathes around it now, thick with rot and the whispers of failed experiments. Umbrella's tests did not end at the lab. Dorsey seeped into roots, into the marrow of the earth. Deer move like shadows, their eyes too bright. Fungi bloom in patterns no natural world would design. What was buried here did not stay buried. The progenitor's strain, unstable, seeped into soil long before the T-virus ever walked. The company called it a quarantine. The land knew it as a wound. Trees twist where test subjects fell, their trunks veined with the same pale ichor that once pulsed in human veins. Their mansion's trunk's silence is not veined with the peace, it is the hush before same the pale ichor that once infect pulsed in wind human veins stirs again. The forest remembers every vial shattered, every creature released. It does not forgive. Seasons turn, but the ecosystem bends toward decay. Birds avoid the canopy, streams run sluggish, thick with the residue of abandoned research. The Arklay mountains hold no secrets now, only scars, and beneath them something patient, something that waits. The prison's walls are not stone. They are the earth itself, broken. The progenitor's children do not need doors to escape. They are already outside. The earth does not forgive, it buries, it forgets. 3 names carved into the rod of Arklay's roots, 3 architects of a silent apocalypse. Oswell E. Spencer, the visionary who built empires on suffering, his laughter echoing through halls stained with progenitor's blackened sap. He did not found Umbrella to save lives. He founded it to play God, to mold flesh like clay, to father monsters in his own image. The mansion was his womb, a gilded cage for a virus that writhed beyond his grasp. Marcus, the mad alchemist, who first split progenitor's DNA with trembling hands and a scientist's hubris. His lab notes, yellowed and blood-stained, whisper of failed hybrid creatures that bled silver, that screamed in frequencies that shattered bone. He did not seek a cure. He sought transcendence. The forest around his tower grew sick with it, trees contorted into twisted sentinels, their bark pulsing with latent infection. And Wesker, the serpent in the garden, who took Marcus' chaos and sharpened it into a blade. His experiments did not contain, they accelerated. The T-virus was not an accident. It was a culmination of fever dream of Spencer's greed, Marcus' obsession, and Wesker's cold calculus. The mansion's walls could not hold what they had unleashed. The progenitor's children seeped into the soil, into the air, into the bones of every creature that breathed. What kind of father leaves such a legacy? What kind of God builds a prison only to watch it crumble? The Arklay forest does not mourn, it remembers. And in its silence, it waits. Beneath the moss-cloaked stones of the Spencer estate, roots twist like veins of a forgotten god. Twisted flora bleeds iridescent sap where soil should weep rain. Lab notes, water-stained and fraying, detail a pathogen too volatile for its creator's progenitor, the ghost in the machine of modern bioweapons. What containment could hold what it touched? The forest did not bar its thorns to keep horrors in. It grew to keep them hungry, to starve their spread beyond these hills. Umbrella's engineers called it Phase 1 containment, a field test. They did not ask if the virus was contained. They asked how much it could consume before spitting back a weapon. Those pages, scrawled in the final hours, whisper of mutations that outpaced their cures. The mansion's walls, now rubble, once hummed with generators not to power labs but to silence what stirred beneath. The progenitor's legacy is not in its failures. It is in every vial of T-virus, every strain that followed, a wound that never clotted, only adapted. The forest's silence is no accident. It is the echo of a quarantine that became its own. What if the true experiment was never the virus? What if the Arklay Mountains were the subject? And we are merely the variables still being calculated. What if the Arklay Mountains were a prison, not a mansion? The forest breathes, not with life, but with the slow, wet gasp of rot. Beneath its canopy, the earth pulses with the progenitor's first mutation, a sickness older than Umbrella's vaults, older than the red-eyed horrors that now stalk its roots. The Spencer mansion was never a fortress. It was a scar, a crude stitch in the fabric of a containment zone that sprawled for miles. Trees bent inward like ribs around a festering wound. The air thickens with the stench of iron and decay, a perfume of failed experiments. Umbrella did not build walls to hold the virus back. They built them to watch it grow. The progenitor was a whisper. The T-virus was a scream. Ouroboros, the final verse in a hymn of hubris. Each iteration birthed in the shadows of this forest, each death a data point. The corporate boardrooms in Raccoon City never saw the trees. They saw number graphs climbing like the infected's fevered breath, profits blooming from the blackened soil. The forest remembers. It remembers the first test subject, a man whose bones dissolved into the underbrush. It remembers the engineers who mapped the virus spread with coffee-stained charts, their hands steady as they signed death warrants. The mansion's stone walls are not cold. They are numb to the howls of things that were once human, numb to the truth. Containment was never the goal. The progenitor's legacy is not in its mutations. It is in the system that nurtured them. Umbrella's worst impulses did not die with the T-virus. They evolved. They became the algorithms that track us, the protocols that justify the next experiment. The Arklay forest is not a relic, it is a mirror. And in its reflection, the virus still waits. What if the Arklay Mountains were a prison, not a mansion? Beneath Raccoon's ashes, Spencer's walls still hum with progenitor's whisper. The T-virus broke free first here, Umbrella's earliest fault line. Did they bury a pathogen or a warning? Roots hold what protocols could not. The next video on